1. Warning, I swear a lot. Long-time lurker, thought I'd share my story. This is a two-parter, but they'll be in the same post. Event 1. For some background information, this occurred about 2 years ago. I was 21 and in university, but living with my parents as I wanted to save money. Also, just wasn't really into the whole college life experience. Luckily, university was a short commute, about 30 minutes by public transit. I'm a very petite woman, about 4'11" and 110 pounds. This is probably what attracts the creeps. My parents' house was located near a subway station, about a 10 to 15 minute walk. If you exit the station and take a right, walk straight down a main road, two-way road, each way with 2 lanes of an island of sidewalk in between, for about 10 minutes, then take a left up a hill. Coincidentally, there was a bus that goes down that main road, cutting my walk time considerably if I can catch it. At this time, I was walking home and experimenting with the reliability of the bus, and a bus tracker app I just purchased, to see if it was worth taking as part of my regular commute. I started walking down the main road, checked my bus tracker app, and realized the bus was about 4 minutes away. So I stopped at the nearest bus stop to wait for it. I had my earbuds in, and I noticed a man also waiting at the stop. I gave him a half smile of polite acknowledgement, and then focused my attention to my music. So I'm standing there, chilling out, maxing, relaxing, all cool, until this man starts waving at me to get my attention. He must have been trying to talk to me, but I couldn't hear. So I pop out an earbud. "Excuse me? What time is it?" he asks. Typical from someone waiting for a bus. I tell him the time and let him know the bus should be here within a few minutes. He nods. I then put my earbuds back in. He waved again for my attention, pulled out an earbud and asked him to repeat. "What is your name?" It sounded like English wasn't his first language. Nothing new or concerning, as we weren't very far from an airport. He had a small rolling luggage bag, carry-on size. But still, I had no intention of continuing conversation. "Stephanie," I lied. In hindsight, I probably shouldn't have said anything at all. I turned around, about to put my earbud back in, hoping he'd catch the hint that I wasn't in the mood to talk. Before I could get the earbud in this time, he tapped my shoulder. Now this annoys the hell out of me. I have a thing about personal space, especially with strangers. "Where do you live?" he asked. I gave him a confused look. "What?" He repeats the question. Now, I look racially ambiguous, so a lot of people like to ask me where I'm from, or my ethnic background, or what are you? Ugh. Maybe he means that. "You mean where I'm from? Where do you live? What house?" "What the fuck?" I chuckle nervously. "I'm not going to tell you that, sir." "Why not?" He gave this weird smile like he thought he was being clever or some shit. "Where's your house?" "Can you take me to your house?" My heart stops there. I feel this guy's bad news. "No, I don't know you. I have to go now. Goodbye." I said as firmly as I could, and I just booked it. I'm going down the main road, and I don't look back until the next block. Surprise, he's walking in my direction. Shit. Who waits for a bus and then just starts walking away? I mean, other than me, running from a creep. I cross the street, but only halfway, and I stop at a sidewalk island between the lanes. He crosses too, about a half a block behind me. I cross back to where I started. He crosses too. He's definitely following me. He probably wants to follow me to my house. I start panicking, and I just sprint, hoping his rolling bag will slow him to keep up with me. At the next block, I look over my shoulder again. It looks like he's jogging, but I'm at least getting distance on him. Once I reached my street, I looked over one more time. It looked like he stopped jogging. I have a good block and a half distance from him. At this point, I take that left, cross the street, and run straight up my hill without looking back again. This may not sound that creepy, but another unsettling incident happened shortly later. Can't tell if it's coincidence or if they're related. Event 2. Maybe 2 weeks later, I'm walking home again. As I'm walking up my hill, A car pulls up next to me. This always makes me tense, but I figure it just might be a neighbor coming home, and I try to brush it off. I'm not the type of person to know or care about the cars my neighbors drive. But then I feel a tap on my shoulder. God damn it. I look and it's not the same guy as before. This guy looks like a yuppie. Not typical for my neighborhood. Maybe he's lost. But I look visibly confused and tense. I look back. His car door is open. "What's your name?" he asks me. English definitely sounds like his native language. "I'm not going to tell you that," I say. I try to sound assertive, but I just sounded scared. "Where do you live?" "Okay, what the fuck? Why is everyone so concerned about my address all of a sudden?" We're getting close to my house now, about 3 houses away, and I'm starting to panic. But it's late afternoon, the sun is setting. I'm sure if this guy tries anything, I can scream loud enough for neighbors to hear. I stop walking. Frustrated and scared, I snap at him. "What do you want?" "I want to take you out, of course." He smiles. I'm getting deja vu, but this guy looks nothing like the man from weeks before. Nor does he look like he'd associate with him. But the tap, the same questions word for word, that douchey smile. Anyways, who stops their car to ask out a random girl on the street? That's creepy as fuck. Look man, I'm not interested, okay? And I go back to walking home. To my surprise, this guy isn't following me, and is walking back to his car. I take advantage of him having his back turned, and I sprint to my house and close the door as quickly as I can, hoping he didn't notice which house I went into. I peeked out the window, and I see his car driving away. There have been no concerning incidents since then. I moved out of my parents' house last year, but I'm always on edge now when I walk home. A month after the second incident, my friend bought me pepper spray for my birthday. So, creepy dudes who may or may not be in cahoots. Let's never meet again. 2. Let me start off by telling you about my cat. We got him because someone dropped him off at our farm, and he is the sweetest little kitten I've ever met. He's really cuddly, and he has a bit of a hearing problem because of a blood clot in his ears, but don't worry, he's okay. He's a very smart cat, and is actually kind of protective. His name is Ozzy. The town I live in is pretty small, and we don't have a lot of crime here, so my parents don't really make sure to lock the doors at night or any of that. That's probably why this guy thought to try and rob us. I woke up in that night because of my cat. He was standing right on my chest, meowing very loudly. I thought this was extremely weird because he never meows. Not for food, not to go out. Never. I automatically assumed he was sick because he does occasionally meow when he's going to throw up. So I started to take him downstairs so I could take him outside and let him get it out of his system. That's when I noticed the truck. There was a rusty blue pickup truck outside in our driveway. The lights were off. I found that odd too, because if it was one of my parents' friends, they would be on, and they would probably be honking. I didn't recognize the truck either. I was starting to get the feeling something was extremely wrong. I could hear the back door open. I knew it wasn't my parents, because my mom never wakes up until at least 7, and this was around 2:30. My dad was hunting somewhere in Pennsylvania, and my little brother was asleep. My cat had stopped meowing now, and was slowly walking over to the stairs. I could tell he was trying to be quiet, and somewhere in my tired brain I had started to figure out someone was in my house. I was starting to panic, but I didn't want to call 911 in case it actually was my mom letting out the dogs or something. Even though it didn't sound like it. It was too quiet to be that, and I didn't hear the dogs fighting, so I decided to follow Ozzy to the stairs. Ozzy stopped as soon as he got to the top of the stairs. He was looking down and had stopped meowing. I decided to slowly go down the stairs. My house is old and the floor and stairs creak a lot, just to see if it was a misunderstanding. I remember I just went down the first couple steps when I saw the man. He was standing in our living room with his back to me, wearing all black, holding something in his hand as he slowly crept towards the stairs. I shot backwards and grabbed the cat. I knew he heard me then, because he started to move a lot faster. He was at the bottom of the steps, and now I could see he was holding a knife. I was fucking terrified. I was crying now, trying not to make a noise because I didn't want to wake the dogs or my mom and get them stabbed. I ran into my room, cat in my hands, and slammed the door, making sure I locked it. I was fucking praying the man didn't open the door to my brother's room, which was right before mine, and was too focused on me instead. I grabbed my phone and called my dad, whispering tearfully that there was someone in the house and how I loved him and to call the police. He was panicking now too, knowing a man with a knife was in his house with his wife and kids, and he could do nothing about it. I told him to call the police again, and right as I hung up, I heard the man open the door to my brother's room. I screamed, louder than I ever have in my life. I grabbed hold of some little glass bird, flung open the door, and threw it right at the man. It hit him in the face. I saw his eyes grow wild with anger, and I screamed again and slammed the door. I could hear my mom wake up downstairs and ask what was wrong, and I could hear the man run down the stairs, through the living room, out the door, and to his truck. I could hear him leave, and I could hear my brother screaming, and my mom running up the stairs. And then I fainted. The next morning, when we went to town to file a police report, we saw that the man had robbed an old woman. I knew it was him because it described his truck perfectly. It said he stabbed her, took all her jewelry, money, anything he could find, and fled. She survived, but they still haven't found him. I hope that bastard rots in jail. I don't know why that man ran away. He could have easily killed me and my family and took everything we owned. Maybe he couldn't see good because of glass in his eye. Or maybe he thought other people had better stuff than us. Or maybe he just felt wrong killing a 14-year-old child. I don't know. Whatever the reason, I'm thankful for it. I owe my life to my cat. It feels weird saying that, but it's true. If he hadn't woken me up that night, my whole family could have died. The day after, as we were still recovering, I remember we went to the grocery store and bought him 2 whole bags of treats. He deserved it. I always lock the door before I go to bed now. I never really thought that kind of thing would happen to me. But I don't want to take any more chances. Better safe than sorry. 3. A few years ago, my partner and I moved from the East Coast to the Pacific Northwest. We didn't know anyone in this city. We just saved up a decent chunk of money and hopped on a plane. It was exciting, and we certainly haven't regretted it. The plan was to stay at hostels and cheap hotels until we could find work and an apartment. Finding work was actually quite easy for us. We had new jobs within a week of getting off the plane. Finding somewhere to live, though, was a nightmare. Everywhere we looked had incredibly steep requirements for credit scores and minimum household income. We tried more legitimate sites at first, but after 2 months of hopping around to different hostels, motels, Airbnb places, we became desperate, so we went to Craigslist. Many of the listings we tried gave us just as much trouble as the first. So one day I'm desperately scouring Craigslist for rooms, and I come across one that seemed a little weird. The poster said that he had a very large house in a nice neighborhood, and that he wanted to rent out a 500 square foot room for $600 a month, utilities included. In this city, that was suspiciously cheap. He also wrote it in a rambling sort of way. It was almost half ad for a room and half open letter to everyone that had recently accused him of being creepy. Now obviously, if we weren't so desperate, we wouldn't have even considered contacting this man. but we thought that we might have been taking a risk of running out of money before we could get in somewhere at this rate. So we gave him a call. On the phone, he sounded relatively normal. He actually suggested that we meet with him in a public place. To talk about the room first, we agreed to meet him at a restaurant near the hostel we were staying at, though we didn't tell him which one, of course. He showed up late and looked surprised to actually see us there. He sat down and talked for a long time. I say he talked rather than we talked because he rambled non-stop about himself and how he felt persecuted by everyone in this city. He claimed to be an artist and a collector. In between him repeating himself many times about how the locals just don't understand his passions, he also told us that the room he had advertised was currently filled with his collection. He never once said what he had collected, and that if things went well, he would have to hire people to move it into storage before we could move in. At one point, he stopped talking abruptly and ran to the restroom. We took this opportunity to discuss the situation. We knew at that point he was probably a crazy person, but the threat of homelessness was looming. So we agreed that we should at least see the place and decide based on that rather than his eccentricities. He came back to the table sweaty and flustered. We weren't sure why at the time, but we figured it out later. Before we could say anything, he blurted out, "I want to show you the apartment right now." We were surprised by this, but we had just discussed seeing it, so we agreed. I asked him to text me the address, and that we would take public transportation and meet him there. He insisted that he drive us there, since we didn't have a car. Now, we were obviously hesitant to get in his truck. It was obvious, even to him, I think. But the previously mentioned desperation was still a thing, and we were pretty sure he wasn't going to try to hurt us. We were right, but it was still a bad decision in retrospect. So we crammed into the front seat of his tiny, rusty, ancient-looking pickup truck. My partner was pressed up against the door, and I was uncomfortably close to the driver as he continued his babble about how this city had gone downhill, and how everyone he used to hang out with shuns him these days. At one point, I whispered to my partner to get ready for a possible tuck-and-roll situation. He saw me whispering, but couldn't hear me over the wind roaring through the cab of the truck. One of the windows was broken out. Really added to the vehicle's charms. And he said something about we were romantic together, and that he envied our youth. We arrived at his house minutes after that. He had been technically honest up to this point. His neighborhood was decent looking, and his home was a pretty large one-story ranch house. I noted out loud that he had bars on all of his windows and several locks on his front door. He said that his collection was very valuable to him, and he was just protecting it from thieves. Once he let us in, I made a point of urging him ahead so that he couldn't get a chance to lock the door behind us. We very quickly noticed three things: his art, his collection, and the smell. This man's method of art, of which he was very proud, was apparently to take lots of innocent childlike things, baby dolls, stuffed animals, ceramic figurines, children's toys, etc., and attach dildos to them. One of the most notable pieces being the one he referred to as his unicorn. It was a ceramic horse figurine that he sloppily sawed the head off of, and replaced with a baby doll's head, and added a hand-sculpted clay penis as the horn. His collection consisted mainly of rubber, plastic, and latex clothing, and gas masks. Both his collection and his art was everywhere. The place was so jam-packed with junk that every room had only single-file path going through it. That you couldn't walk without bumping into art or stepping on piles of fetishware. This fellow was definitely not concerned about cleanliness. This place reeked of mildew and moldy rubber. The carpet looked as if it hadn't seen a vacuum since the 70s. As we passed through the kitchen, he declared that he loves cast iron pans because you don't have to wash them. Just as we noticed that every countertop was cluttered with rusted pans that all looked to have decades worth of scorched food caked on. We stayed behind him, mostly silent as he stopped every now and then to point out his favorite art pieces, and to repeatedly tell us he was leading us to the room, and that it was full of his favorite stuff right now. But he'd get people to move it out for us. He said that like us moving in was a sure thing. He opened the door to the room, and actually said, "Voila!" I don't doubt that the room was around 500 square feet, but every inch of it was stuffed with clothing racks. The clothing racks were all packed with the same thing: shiny rubber, latex, plastic pairs of pants with dildos sewn to the front of them. Up to this point, we were doing our best to avoid reacting to all of the freaky stuff in this guy's home, because we were afraid he'd snap on us if we did. But I started to notice, after a while though, that he was getting disappointed that we weren't reacting to anything. My guess is that he gets off on shocking people with his creepy pants, and this wasn't going as well as he had hoped. We told him that the room looked big enough, and that we'd like to go back to our hotel and think it over. He didn't have much of a reaction to that, but he agreed to drive us home now. When he thought that I wasn't looking, he took something out of his pocket and tossed it through the open doorway of a dark room on his way past it. I was afraid that it might have been his car keys, so I used the light on my phone to peek in as we passed that room. The whole room was a pile of tied-off used condoms, or sperm balloons as my partner called them later. We later speculated that he was masturbating at the restaurant, and added a balloon to the pile before taking us back. So we piled back into his truck and had a long, awkward drive back to the place we had met. His rambling was much more frustrated this time around, and he passed where we wanted to get out 3 times, before we just jumped out at a red light frantically shouting, "This is good here, well it was nice meeting you, thanks, bye." I added his number to my contacts as Mr. Creepypants. Over the next several days, he sent a few texts asking if we'd talked it over yet. I wanted to be polite, so I just said, "We've decided against it, but thank you for the very nice offer." He responded with the phrase, "Are you creeped yet?" Copied and pasted over and over about 30 times. I'm not sure why I was still trying to be polite, but when he stopped spamming me, I responded, "No, we thought that your collection was lovely, but it's just so large that we can't bring ourselves to ask you to move it." It took him a few more days to respond, but he did, and he took it better than I expected. "Yeah, I really didn't want to move it. Thanks for understanding." He then made a recommendation for a local burger place, for some reason. I blocked his number shortly after that, just to be safe. For the record, we didn't care that he was a fetishist of some sort. We cared that he was really friggin' gross. So, Mr. Creepypants, let's not meet again. Hey everyone, Hellfreezer here, and thank you very much for listening to 3 True Scary Stories, episode 107. Well, I don't mean to sound judgmental or anything, but I'm totally judging Mr. Creepypants. You know, I mean, you do you, whatever gets you through the day, but don't foist your weirdness on other people. Keep your weirdness to yourself. Or find someone else just as weird as you and be weird together. Hell, in a horror movie, Mr. Creepypants would be trying to cut off people's heads and sew dildos to them. Well, at least that didn't happen. And we can cross our fingers that it never happens. And with that thought, I'm going to leave you now. So until next time, thank you very much for listening, and take very good care of yourselves.